Welcome to Conversations Live. For more than a decade, we've brought you the best in books, entertainment, and current events. When the movers and shakers of the world have something to say to you, they say it to us first. And now, celebrating 15 years of broadcasting, here's your host, cyrus-webb.
And welcome back, everyone, to Conversations Live. I'm your host, cyrus-webb. Glad you all could join us once again, whether you're tuning in on your community station in Mississippi at WYAD 94.1 FM or through WYADonline.com. We're glad you all could join us today. Also, those tuning in to online affiliates around the world, we're glad you all could be with us as well. As we're having this conversation today, it is Pub Day for author Christina Dalcher. We're going to talk to Christina not only about the writing of the book VOX, but also what it's been like for her to see the early response to the book, a little bit about the story. We're not going to spoil it for you guys who haven't read it yet, but we'll definitely let you know how you can get your own copy of the book and stay connected with Christina. Christina, hello to you and welcome to the program.
Well, hello, Cyrus, and thank you for having me.
Hey, the pleasure is definitely all mine. Congratulations to you, Christina, on what is a really thought-provoking read. It is entertaining. You know, parts of the book, really make you think, about the world that we live in today and how, some of these things, unfortunately, are not as, unrealistic as, as we might have thought, even some years ago. What has it been like for you already, Christina, to be able to see the way that people are already responding to the new book?
It's quite overwhelming. And, at risk of creating a silly little pun, most of it leaves me rather speechless. It's that what's most interesting, Cyrus, is the spectrum of response. And I'm not just talking about a spectrum from positive to negative, but also the individual elements that certain people find resonant and they differ, right? And this makes sense. You read a book, you look at a piece of art, you listen to a piece of music. Nobody really sees the world in exactly the same way as all the other people. So we have gotten responses that are really keen on thinking about the linguistic elements, on how absolutely amazing it is that we humans, and only we humans, speak language. We've gotten people who are talking about how this might tie in to certain movements this year. We've gotten similarities to older dystopian novels, the classics like Orwell's 1984 and Huxley's Brave New World. Also more recent dystopias, even though The Handmaid's Tale isn't that recent, but the resurgence, of course, is very now.
Sure.
So, and of course, there are people who look at this as a warning call, who are looking at VOX as having a message that says, look, people, women and men alike, don't just be one of those three people who don't go out and vote during presidential elections. Be one of the other two. Be active. Use your voice while you still have it.
Yeah. So that brings up this question, and I thought about it because I knew I was going to be talking to you, Christina. When did you realize the importance of your own voice? When did you know that in some way you wanted to be able to allow your own voice to be heard, whether it's in a book like this or another format?
Well, that's an interesting question. There have been many times, many experiences in my life where I have felt that I couldn't really say what I wanted to say. Sometimes it was for fear of being embarrassed. Sometimes it was for fear of being on the let's say, the unpopular side of an argument, and not just a political one. Sometimes, and this has happened too, it was when I wanted to speak up and defend a person who I thought was being wrongly treated, but that was also rather unpopular. So there have been many times when I have self-censored, right? And I think that one of the most important things that we can do as human beings and as responsible citizens, as friends, as members of our communities, is to obviously we're all going to self-censor, right? We're not going to go out and say, what an ugly dress that is. Jane.
Yeah. Right.
That would be cruel. But there is also a sense in which we do have to speak out. There's an interesting quote from Orwell. It's one of my favorite quotes, and I'm paraphrasing, but it goes like this. Freedom is the ability to say what other people don't want to hear. And I think that we're at a time when this message is crucial, really, really crucial. And we've seen silencing on all sides, right? I mean, the people on the right want to silence the left. People on the left want to silence the right. Different brands of, let's say, feminists don't want to hear what a certain type of feminist has to say. I mean, we have this remarkable ability, we humans, to divide ourselves into factions and to not talk. And some of that not talking, I think, stems from fear of saying the wrong thing, of being labeled as a pariah, of being labeled as unpopular, of being shunned. But the only way we're ever going to move forward, whether we're talking about feminism or politics or anything else, is to actually be honest with one another and use our voices.
Right. And that's one thing the main character, Jean McClellan, realizes in the book VOX for sure. I want to talk about Jean for a moment in a broader view than
Sure.
a couple of the scenes that really stood out to me, because I think one of the big things is she's relatable in that, of course, she knows she has something to protect. She has something to live for, and that is family. How difficult was it for you to separate yourself from her? Because we get to know her pretty in-depthly, and we're able to kind of see why she makes the decisions that she makes. Was it easy for you to come in and out of your engagement with her?
I think it was. This is where the creative part of me, I think, took over. And believe me, before I started writing 4 years ago, I didn't think I had a creative bone in my body. I'd never written creative fiction, never, ever, ever. There are differences, obviously, between Jean and myself, and similarities. On the one hand, we're the same age. We've got somewhat similar life experiences. But the big difference is that Jean has children, and I do not. And so I did have to draw on other, external experiences when I was writing about Jean and her interactions with her children, just, general world knowledge, the way I've seen other families interact with one another, and so forth. So it wasn't really difficult to get into her character, but it was very surprising that I was able to do that. Yeah.
Well, I think, the book does bear the question. Well, there are a couple of questions. Well, there are a lot of questions, I guess. That comes up in the book. But I'll mention two of them. I'll mention two that come to mind as I'm having this conversation with you. One, what are you willing to do for to protect those that you love? I think that is a question people will feel. But also, what are you willing to give up so that you're able to make sure that you are heard? And I think that is the thing. There, the truth has consequences, actions have consequences. All of that kind of comes out in VOX. Did you know that it was going to take the twists and turns that it did, Christina, or was that as much a surprise for you as it is for the reader as the book unfolds?
Absolutely a surprise. I'm going to take that second part first.
Okay.
So my writing process is I'm not going to say it's unique, but it's different than many others. And everybody writes books differently. We've heard terms like plotters and pantsers being thrown around, yes? So there are certain people who plot out every single element of a book before they start writing. And all the character arcs, all the interactions, all the scenes, all the beats. Then there are people who just start writing. And what I do is something a little bit in between. I start with a beat sheet, which is a film term, effectively 12 sentences that tell me the bare bones outline of the book and where all the major plot turns or salient events are going to happen, right down to, at 20% through the book, we're going to be at this point, or, 30% we're going to introduce the B story, and so on and so forth. but very little is fleshed out. In fact, I don't even have all of the characters fleshed out sometimes when I start writing. And for me, this is a real joy because I always have goals. I know that I need to get to this word count before something else happens. But then it's quite a surprise to see how things unfold in between these 12 beats that take place during an 85,000-word novel. So there's a sense in which I'm almost like a reader while I'm writing, and it helps because I can focus on one scene or one beat at a time and see how things go. Other than that, I write very, very linearly. The first part of the question now, I have forgotten.
I think it really goes to what I was bringing up, were the different themes of not only, of course, what are you willing to do for those that you love, right, Christina, but also, of course, how far will you go, for the truth and to make sure that the truth is heard, knowing that there can be consequences. That definitely comes up in the case with Jean.
Right, and there are struggles. I mean, there's almost a Sophie's choice element to this. Without giving away any spoilers, something does happen to Jean, and she's got yet another choice to make between her existing family and her responsibilities to her existing family, and then a possible and much brighter future. So, this has got to be a mother's nightmare, right? Which one do I pick? It's sort of almost like a Solomon-like tale. What will you give up? What will you do? And those things they seem opposed, but they're actually quite related. Now, what does she do? Well, she certainly takes some risks. She decides to become more active, and I think that her progress as a character is a good one. Now, does she actually turn into the uber activist friend of hers from college, Jackie, who was going to every march and writing to every congressman? No, I don't think Jean does that. But she does emerge from this research bubble, this academic bubble, this ivory tower sort of enclosed palace that she's put herself in, and she realizes that yes, in fact, the only way to effect change is, in fact, to make decisions and act on them.
I want to read something from the book, and I think it's one of the most powerful phrases that Jean kind of reflects to us in Chapter 44. Christina, then we can talk about it a little bit and then kind of use the parallel of today. You write this: as we drive, the landscape changes from rural to suburban. All those houses, I think, are little prisons, and inside them are cells in the shape of kitchens and laundry closets and bedrooms. Morgan's words come back to me. As a matter of fact, talk about how things were better before, long ago, when men worked and women stayed in their private sphere of cookery and cleaning and baby making. I don't think I really believed it would happen. I don't think any of us did. I think, for a lot of times for people, some things just seem too far-fetched or too absurd when people say about what could happen and what could be the world, and then the world changes. What was it like for you to kind of take that? Because I should say, for those who have not read the book is written in first person, so we're able to kind of take this journey along with Jean throughout the book. So what was it like for you to allow Jean to experience what could actually become the reality of life?
Right. Well, it was quite frightening. I mean, I frightened myself while writing almost every scene of this book. One interesting thing that I want to bring up about this sort of romanticizing of the past, the research that I did for VOX did involve fairly extensive research into the Victorian era culture of domesticity, when we had such things as true women who were expected to be pious and loyal, subservient, pure or virginal, and ultimately domestic. And it was a very interesting thing that happened between the Victorian era and the middle of the 20th century, we certainly saw these very strong women who were not going to play along by these rules. And in fact, women became more vocal. I mean, look at the flappers of the 20s, or look at the women who went to work during World War II, either here in the United States in factories, in the UK at Bletchley Park, and so on. Then what happened was we kind of slid back a little bit more. We ended up with the 1950s, which are, considered the halcyon days, right, by many.
Yeah.
Look how wonderful this is. Father Knows Best. I Love Lucy. All these, lovely sort of romanticized depictions of blissful home life, domestic life, which really was a resurgence of the culture of domesticity. I think once we had the major feminist and egalitarian push in the 60s and 70s, we did not see this happening again. We didn't see a resurgence. But the big what if question in VOX, of course, is, well, why shouldn't we? I mean, we always say history repeats itself, right? So why not dig back into the past and see if there's some tidbit, a cultural tidbit, that might actually experience a rejuvenation.
Yeah.
And so Jean thinks about this, but she doesn't.
Exactly.
But she does, of course, just like the rest of us. We would all say, "Oh, we'll never go back there. We've come too far." Now, do I really, as a person, as a woman, as an individual, do I think that we're going to slide back into a culture of domesticity? I would have to honestly say no. Do I believe, however, that there are some people in the world who would love that? Absolutely. Absolutely.
Right. And I think that's it. And I think when I read that passage, Christina, that's exactly what I thought about. There are people you hear kind of reminisce about the old days and how things used to be. And what would make things better. And I think, the idea, though, in VOX that really got me is that if enough people believe that they can make it something that becomes a reality for everyone. And I think, and I think that is the interesting thing about this book that makes, truth sometimes stranger than fiction, right? I mean, that's what we have to be so careful. Even I'm realizing that sometimes no decision is a decision. And I think we see that in VOX, right?
Mm-hmm. We absolutely do. We absolutely do. When I was looking up voter statistics for presidential elections, I was seeing numbers floating around the 60 to 65% turnout rate. And on my pre-publication tour, rather, in Germany and Austria and Italy and the UK, I was quite surprised to find that those numbers are pretty much the same in those countries. So, sure, no decision is actually a decision. And also, when we're talking about how quickly things can change, we also need to look at Jean's oldest son, Stephen, who is he's creepy, but I can't help feel sorry for him because he's still a young person. He's not really an adult. But he is embracing this new pure movement, and he's embracing it in spades. Now, we've seen this happen too, talking about truth being stranger than fiction. We saw it happen in Germany with the Hitler Youth. We saw it happening here in the Manson family. We saw followers of cults, flower children, Moonies, Jim Jones. I mean, people can be, and especially young people, I think, can be very malleable. So on the one hand, I really hated Jean's son while I was writing him. On the other hand, I couldn't hate him too much. You see?
Right. And I think that's it. I wasn't sure how much you wanted to talk about him, so I didn't bring him up.
Oh no, I'm perfectly okay talking about him.
Yeah.
I think if I were to write a follow-on to VOX, I would certainly want Stephen, Jean's oldest son, to feature much more prominently, because I think he's rather a complex character. right?
Gotcha.
I mean, he deserves, on the one hand, he deserves our hatred, but on the other, he almost deserves our sympathy. This is
sympathy.
This is
Yeah, I
not
was
his
thinking that
fault.
too. Yeah.
I mean, it takes a very strong person, and I think it takes a lot of world experience. And this goes for anyone. We're not just talking about people who are being sucked into cults, but people who are being sucked into any kind of trend. It takes a very strong backbone to stand up and be an individual and say, you know what, I hear what you're saying, but I have to think for myself. This is a thing. It's not really. I didn't really embellish on this in VOX, but it is something that's very important to me. This idea of individualism, this idea of being able to establish your own parameters and your own values to decide what is good and what is evil instead of following blindly along with the crowd.
Right. For sure. I think that's it. A lot of great things, and it is also great entertainment, I think, for readers because it brings you in because it does seem so real, Christina, and that says a lot about you as a storyteller. Again, everyone, Christina Dalcher has been our guest. Great conversation with you. The book is called VOX. It's available now wherever you buy your books. Of course, our friend is Amazon.com, but you can also get it through your favorite bookstore. If your favorite bookstore does not have it, they would be more than happy to order it for you. And, Christina, let our audience know, how can they stay connected with you?
Well, I'm all over the web. I've got a site that is www.christinadalcher.com, and I'm also on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram under the hashtag, which is the same in all cases, at CV Dalcher. That's Charlie Victor Dalcher. And I'd love to hear from everyone.
All right, so make sure you all are definitely staying connected with Christina. Congratulations to you again, and looking forward to our next conversation together, Christina.
Thank you so much. It was my pleasure. I really appreciate you having me.
Yeah, the pleasure is definitely all mine, and we thank your audience for tuning in to another great segment of Conversations Live. If you all came in late and missed part of the conversation with Christina, don't worry. Thanks to our online friends, you all can catch the replay right after we go off the air. The link is already available through our social media sites. So head over to Facebook.com/cyrus-webb or go to Twitter.com/cyrus-webb. If you click on the link there, you can listen to the show completely for free and share with your friends from there, too. Until next time, I'm your host, Cyrus Webb, saying, as always, enjoy your day, enjoy your life, enjoy your world. Make sure you take out time to enjoy some good music as well as a great book. Thank you all for choosing Conversations Live today. Let's make it a great one.